For many, the act of getting married is a never-ending promise of love and commitment. This is sadly not the case for everyone. There are many things that motivate one to kill their spouses, such as a new love interest, money, or even a fear of losing them or any children they share. But regardless, to most of us, these reasonings cannot justify the actions that have been carried out. Pamela Smart. Pamela Ann Wojaz was born in Florida on August 16, 1967. She was just 19 years old when she met Gregory Smart at a New Year's Eve party in 1986, where the pair bonded over their shared love of heavy metal music. By February 1987, the couple had formed a relationship, and just 2 years later, they were married. However, cracks soon began to show in the couple's relationship, with problems arising just 7 months after they were married. Pamela met 15-year-old William Billy Flynn at a local drug awareness program, where they both volunteered. She was 22 at the time. It's unknown what conversation took place between Billy and Pamela, who bonded, like she and her husband did, over their enjoyment of heavy metal music, and entered into an affair. But at some point, the plan was hatched. The plan to kill Gregory Smart. On May 1st, 1990, Pamela came home from work to find her house ransacked and her husband murdered in cold blood. It seemed clear from the get-go that Gregory had disturbed a robbery in progress and had been shot for it. But all was not as it seemed, and on-the-ball detectives soon found out about the affair between Pamela and Billy, and Pamela was accused of seducing the 15-year-old and threatening to withhold sex from him until he killed her husband. Billy took along friends to help him carry out his task: Patrick Randall, Vance Latime Jr., and Raymond Fowler. During the police's investigation, the father of Vance brought a .38 caliber weapon he'd found in the house to them, suspecting it could be the murder weapon. On May 14th, an anonymous tip came into the police department, which alerted them to the fact that another teenager, who volunteered at the same drug awareness program where Billy and Pamela had met, was aware of the plan. She was also friends with both Billy and Pamela, a girl named Cecilia Pierce. When police approached Cecilia, they asked her if she would wear a wire for them so they could record her conversations with Pamela Smart. Cecilia agreed. At some point over the next few months, the 22-year-old incriminated herself as the police were hoping, but details on what exactly Pamela said are unknown. On August 1st, 1990, at 1:05 p.m., Pamela Smart was arrested for the murder of her husband, Gregory. The trial of real-life femme fatale Pamela Smart garnered masses of attention from the public and the media. The teenagers who had carried out the killing on her behalf had already secured their own plea bargains and were prepared to testify against the woman who'd turned their lives around for the worst. Pamela's trial began on March 4th, 1991. She was described by the prosecutors as an evil woman bent on murder and the mastermind behind the murder plot, while the 4 teenage boys she had ensnared in her plan were portrayed as naive victims, wooed by the charms of an older woman. According to the Assistant Attorney General, Pamela seduced Billy to murder Gregory so that she could avoid a pricey divorce and collect $140,000 worth of life insurance policy money. Despite the fact that Billy was a minor, which meant their relationship was cause for concern in itself, Pamela admitted freely to the affair, but denied being the one who came up with the idea to kill her husband. She claimed she had no part in the plot to murder, and that Billy and his friends decided to do it when Pamela made the decision to put an end to the affair. Pamela's trial lasted 14 days and ended on March 22nd, 1991. she was found guilty of being an accomplice to murder, witness tampering, and conspiracy to commit murder. She was charged for the crime of witness tampering because she tried to get Cecilia Pierce to not say anything to authorities about the plot. Pamela was sentenced to life without parole. Since her imprisonment, she has been subject to beatings from other prisoners and has alleged that she and another inmate were sexually harassed and assaulted by a corrections officer. She also tried to file a lawsuit against the prison after claiming that half-naked photos of her published in the National Enquirer in 2003 were taken by a prison guard who had raped her. Pamela has attended counselling, tutored other prisoners, and gained a master's degree from Mercy College while she has been imprisoned. Billy Flynn was sentenced to life for second-degree murder in 1992, but he was released in 2015 with lifetime parole. Patrick Randall also received lifetime parole in 2015, while the two other boys involved in the case were paroled in 2005. As of 2020, Pamela Smarts has been denied a sentence reduction hearing. This was her second attempt to get a hearing. She is now 52 years old and continues to protest her innocence. Susan Wright. Born in Houston, Texas on April 24, 1976, Susan Lucille Weish was, by all accounts, a seemingly ordinary woman. That is, until 2003, when she became known as the blue-eyed butcher of the Houston suburbs. In 1979, Susan met Jeff Wright while she had been working as a waitress at a restaurant, and in 1998, the pair married while she was 8.5 months pregnant with the couple's first son, Bradley. Just 4 years later, in 2002, their daughter, Kaylee, was born. According to Susan, she first began to experience domestic violence and abuse at the hands of Jeff during the first few years of their marriage. He reportedly became controlling around the time of Bradley's birth. But in 2003, things escalated, and something inside of Susan seemed to snap. On January 18th, Susan admitted to her lawyer that she had killed Jeff. In turn, her attorney reported this to the police, and the then 26-year-old turned herself in. When police investigated the family home in Harris County, Texas, they were met with clues that painted an extremely grisly scene. On January 13th, 2003, Susan tied her husband, Jeff, 34 at the time, to their bed and stabbed him 193 times with 2 different knives. She then buried his body in their backyard before painting the bedroom to cover up the crime. The next day, she filed a false domestic violence report so that she could have a restraining order filed against Jeff. 4 days later, she confessed to her lawyer. Susan Wright's trial began on February 24, 2004, where she pleaded not guilty by way of self-defense. The prosecutor described Susan as a scheming wife who carried out the gruesome crime so that she could collect $200,000 in life insurance for her husband's death, while the defense argued that she had suffered physical and emotional abuse for years and was protecting both herself and her children. Reportedly, Jeff had come home from a boxing class and hit his son after attempting to get Bradley to box with him. Susan testified in her own defense, claiming that she couldn't stop stabbing Jeff, because if she did, he'd grab the knife and kill her. She told the court that her husband had been on a cocaine binge and had beaten her after his encounter with Bradley. Susan's own mother, amongst others, although it is unclear who, stated that they had seen the 26-year-old covered in bruises. However, the jury did not seem to believe anything that Susan and her defense team were saying. On March 3rd, 2004, after more than 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict. Susan was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Susan Wright spent much of the following years trying to appeal her conviction. During such an appeal in 2008, an ex-fiancé of Jeff's came forward to claim that he had been violent with her, and she had endured his abuse for the entire 4-year relationship they had shared. In 2009, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals granted a new sentencing hearing as they deemed that her counsel had proved to be ineffective during the punishment phase of the trial in 2004. The new hearing in 2010 saw some fresh evidence come to light. The prosecutor's theory that Jeff was tied to the bed was not supported by the medical examiner who dug up the body. According to them, Jeff had had so much cocaine that it hadn't all been metabolized, which supported the defense's theory that he was intoxicated that night. The medical examiner also stated that Jeff had several wounds to his hands, forearms, back, and the backs of his legs, injuries that are inconsistent with the idea that he had been tied down at the wrists and ankles to the bed. Although Jeff was found with bindings around his wrists and ankles, it's been theorized that this is how Susan maneuvered her husband to his grave, although it seems that no one truly knows with complete certainty. In an interview with Texas Monthly, Susan admitted to tying one of her husband's arms to the bed when, during the frenzied attack, her son had knocked on their bedroom door. She tied Jeff to the bed before walking Bradley back to his room. Allegedly, during the attack, Jeff had raped Susan before attempting to stab her, and so she stabbed him multiple times before he could. Reportedly, no psychologists or domestic violence experts were ever called to the stand during the 2004 trial of Susan Wright. After her new punishment hearing, Susan's sentencing was reduced from 25 years to 20 years. She was denied parole in 2014 and 2017 and is now eligible for parole once again in 2020.